Hello friends, today I am going to tell you an incredible true story of survival, courage and hope. It all began on Friday, October 13, 1972 in Montevideo, Uruguay. A group of young rugby players from the Old Christians Club boarded a small plane called Fairchild FH-2270. There were a total of 45 people on the flight. They were excited because they were flying to Santiago, Chile for a rugby match. Friends and family were there to see them off, waving and smiling. No one could have imagined what was about to happen. As the plane took off, the passengers relaxed, chatting and laughing. But as they flew closer to the Andes Mountains, the weather turned bad. Dark clouds filled the sky and the plane started shaking. The pilots grew tense. The mountains ahead were dangerous, especially in a storm. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a nightmare. Suddenly, the plane hit a mountain peak. There was a loud crash, and the tail of the plane was torn off. The plane started falling rapidly. Passengers screamed as it slammed into the snow-covered mountainside. When the survivors opened their eyes, they saw chaos around them. The plane was broken into pieces, and many people were hurt or dead. The freezing wind blew snow everywhere. They were stranded in the middle of the Andes with no food, no shelter, and no way to call for help. The question hung in the air. Would anyone find them before it was too late? The survivors huddled together, trying to stay warm. They searched the wreckage and found some food, wine, and blankets. But it wasn't enough. The mountains were freezing, and the temperature dropped to deadly levels at night. Days passed, and hope began to fade. The injured died from their wounds, and the survivors realized the grim truth. No one was coming to save them. The search teams had stopped looking, thinking no one could have survived the crash. But giving up wasn't an option. They had to find a way to survive, no matter the cost. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, and the cold made them weak. The survivors knew they couldn't last much longer. One evening, Roberto Canessa, a medical student, spoke up. "We have to eat," he said, his voice trembling. "There's no other way." The others stared at him, shocked. He wasn't talking about the little food they had left. He was talking about the bodies of the dead. The room fell silent. The idea was horrifying, but as the days turned into weeks, they realized it was their only chance. One by one, they agreed. It was a decision that would haunt them forever, but it was also the decision that kept them alive. Just when they thought things couldn't get worse, disaster struck again. One night, as the survivors slept, a loud roar filled the air. An avalanche crashed down the mountain, burying their shelter under tons of snow. Panic set in as they struggled to breathe, trapped in the darkness. Some screamed while others prayed. It took hours to dig themselves out, and when they finally emerged, they were fewer in number. The avalanche had taken more lives, and these survivors were left even more broken. But they couldn't give up. They had to keep fighting. Roberto Canessa and Nando Parrado knew they couldn't wait any longer. If they stayed, they would die. They decided to risk everything and set out to find help. With makeshift gear and little food, they began their journey through the treacherous mountains. Every step was a battle against the cold, the altitude, and their own exhaustion. But they pushed on, driven by the hope of saving their friends. Days turned into nights, and the mountains seemed endless. Just when they thought they couldn't go on, they reached the top of a peak. In the distance, they saw a valley. Could this be their way out? Roberto and Nando stumbled into the valley, their bodies on the verge of collapse. They spotted a man on horseback, a Chilean farmer named Sergio Catalan. Desperate, they waved and shouted, their voices cracking with emotion. Sergio listened to their story and promised to help. He rode to the nearest town, and soon helicopters were on their way to the crash site. When the helicopters arrived, the survivors couldn't believe their eyes. After 72 days of hell, They were finally being rescued. But the ordeal had left them forever changed. The survivors were rushed to hospitals, where they began the long process of healing. Their story spread around the world, shocking and inspiring millions. They had faced unimaginable horrors, but they had survived. Yet, the scars, both physical and emotional, would never fully heal. They had lost friends, made unthinkable choices, and endured more than anyone should ever have to. But they had also discovered the strength of the human spirit. Years later, the survivors returned to the Ants, standing together at the crash site. They honored those who had died and reflected on the miracle that had saved them. Their story became a testament to the power of hope, courage, and resilience. It reminded the world that even in the darkest moments, there is always a chance for survival. And so, the miracle of the Ants lives on, a story of tragedy, triumph, and the unbreakable will to live.